Texas has a new problem. There's no potable water as their junior senator returns from a quick jaunt down to Cancun. And love hate 8 to end this shortened week. Friday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning, everybody. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Friday, February 19th. Once again, I am Carlo Versano, and I'm here with Baker McAdoo Machado. Baker, you said to me that one time on the pod about how the telemarketers call you Baker McAdoo, and now I always, whenever I think of you now, I always call you that in my head.
That is the easiest way. I always know somebody on the other end of the line has no idea who I am, Carlo. Although I'm sure every one of us have a horror story with a telemarketer. Either way, happy Friday, Carlo. Good to talk to you, buddy.
We made it.
I feel like 4-day weeks are always amazing because everybody wants a 3-day weekend, but I always feel like 4-day weeks are the worst work weeks because I feel like everybody's more exhausted by this. You're doing more work to make up for the other day that you took off. And so this Friday, I am like literally driving the struggle bus today, Carlo.
I feel you. It's also, I mean, the news feels very biblical lately.
It does.
I think that really does.
It
It doesn't really help. But there is a little bit of good news today, Baker. So
let's dive in for the story we've been talking about every day so far this week, Carlo, and it's what's happening in the Lone Star State. Power has now been restored to most of the residents in Texas who are now facing a new crisis in the lack of drinking water right now. Frozen wells and cracked pipes have led to some people to drink melted snow and ice. Now, the situation at the state's hospitals also particularly dire. This is exhausted healthcare workers who have been treating COVID patients are now being forced to cart in buckets of water just to flush the toilets. In one hospital in particular, Carlo, they've been using bottled water for chemotherapy treatments. So far, at least 30 people in the state have died as a result of the winter weather and the blackouts. I mean, this has been the worst story possible for anybody in Texas this week.
I know. I almost feel guilty complaining, like, oh, this week has been so hard.
I know.
Like,
that's me too. I felt the exact same.
We have electricity.
Yeah. I have hot water, all of that stuff. So true.
Yeah. It's so, prayers to these folks. I hope that it looks like it's going to finally start to thaw down there starting tomorrow. So hopefully that this is going to start to change, and it really already is now that the power at least is coming back on. This is worthy of a longer conversation, but I just keep thinking we have got to do something about the grid in this country.
Totally.
I don't know, nationalize it maybe, if for no other reason than as a national security issue. I mean, drinking melted snow, that's an embarrassment for all of us.
That's like Bear Grylls territory right there, in terms of survival things that you have to do.
Also, I mean, one thing, props to these utility workers who have been working nonstop these last couple of days. They managed to get power back. The current power outage map has about 200,000 people without power. That number was 4 million 2 days ago. So they have done some incredible work in getting electricity back. So just props to them, man.
Absolutely. But we got to also talk about the other story that happened down south in Texas and Mexico as well, Carlo.
Boy.
Ted Cruz, the junior senator from Texas, now finally back on American soil, this after his very brief trip, but very eventful trip to Cancun with his family. Now, he was absolutely pillared for taking a vacation. This is his constituents, as we were talking about, have no power, they're freezing, they're unable to access clean drinking water whatsoever. He said he was just trying to be, quote, a good dad by placating his daughters who wanted to go on a trip because they were home from school and they were freezing. But he later acknowledged that the trip was, quote, obviously a mistake, and he did later apologize for it. Now, this is where things get really bananas, Carlo. Group texts were leaked to the New York Times last night showing that his wife, Heidi, had hastily arranged for this family trip to go to Cancun at the Ritz-Carlton just to get away, and I'm quoting her, from her freezing, and that is in all capital letters, home. Apparently this was to neighbors and friends. So one, I want to know who was the one that leaked the group text. I mean, that is an awkward conversation to have anyway. Two, what a weird story this was that Cruz at the beginning of the day almost doubled down that he almost did nothing wrong. He was just trying to be a good dad. And then when he realized on his basically on his flight back from Cancun how much trouble he was going to get in. He's in like Chris Christie on the beach territory here. He realized he did it about face and essentially did an interview with reporters when he got to the airport, and then he did an interview with Sean Hannity last night as well.
The cleanup crew.
Yep.
It's incredible, though, because, I mean, everyone knows Tulum is where it's at right now.
Well, listen, Tulum has been hot for a while. I tend to be on the west side of Mexico right now, and the Baja side, really good. There's a bunch of other really good towns in Mexico. I'll give you a heads up on. But Tulum is great. But when my in-laws start going to Tulum, you know that Tulum is starting to, you know.
Yeah. God, Baker, we're living in The Simpsons. This is literally a Simpsons bit.
People of Springfield, because of the epidemic, I have canceled my vacation to the Bahamas. I shall not leave the city. Hey, you, get that steel drum out of the mayor's office.
Sorry, man.
But I mean, okay, so where do we think this lands in the pantheon of bad political optics? I would say, so I was thinking about this. I would say that this is ahead of Gavin Newsom eating out at French Laundry during the height of COVID, but it's still behind what you just mentioned, which is the all-time best. Chris Christie closing the state beaches in New Jersey, then literally going to the beach on the 4th of July. Nothing will ever top that. That is first ballot Hall of Fame bad political decisions.
By the way, Cruz defended Chris Christie going to that beach. If you go back through old texts from Ted Cruz, or not tweets from Ted Cruz, he defended Chris Christie going to that beach. But you have to remember, Carla, Chris Christie's approval ratings dropped to 15% when he was found on that beach.
Ted Cruz has now thrown his entire family under the bus for various political reasons. It's actually amazing. I mean, remember Trump, when he was a candidate, called Ted Cruz's wife ugly.
Oh yeah.
And said that Ted Cruz's dad killed Kennedy, and Cruz was like, "Thank you, sir. You have my endorsement." And now he's blaming his daughters for dragging him to Cancun. It's amazing. First of all, if my 10 and 12-year-old daughters were like, "Daddy, I want to go to Cancun," I'd be like, okay, first of all, there's a pandemic. Second of all, there's no power. Third of all, there's no drinking water. Shut up, sit down, don't talk to me again.
But doesn't the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun sound nice right now, Carlo? Don't you want to be there with all this snow?
I'm sure it's fantastic. By the way, this is not even the worst thing that Ted Cruz has done in the last 6 weeks. Don't forget, he was behind trying to basically overthrow the government back in January. Oh, God. It's I mean, we can joke because I think pretty much everybody agrees that Ted Cruz is just I mean, first, I'll put it this way. Lindsey Graham, who is his friend,
Lindsey Graham's quote.
once said, well, what was the exact quote? I have to find it.
I think it was like if somebody
could murder Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate,
nobody would care.
Or no, Ted Cruz could murder somebody on the floor somebody could murder Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate, and there wouldn't be enough votes to convict them.
Right, exactly.
Let's leave it.
Amazing. I mean, the whole story, just absolute bananas. No doubt, of course, we're going to continue to follow that. I mean, listen, when you're the top story on TMZ yesterday, you know you've really broken barriers, Carlo. Let's switch gears and talk.
But Baker, quick, I don't want to. First of all, I could do 20 minutes on Ted Cruz this morning if I had. But you mentioned this, and I just wanted to follow up on it. Breaking the sanctity of the group chat.
Oh, that's the best part.
Ooh, that's. Yikes, man. I would be mighty angry if one of my friends did that.
Oh, I mean, after I saw that story, I said to my husband yesterday, I was like, okay, we have to rethink whoever is in our group texts now after what happened. Not to say that, like, I have anything salacious, anything that's happening in my life. I mean, my life is incredibly boring. But either way, still, that is a new level of leaking there. And by the way, there were reports that some of the protesters that were outside of Ted Cruz's house, there were reports potentially that some of those people were on that group text that were out protesting in front of his house yesterday.
Whew, yikes.
I know, indeed. Okay, let's talk about what's happening on the vaccine front, Carlo. The cavalry is coming. The good news. The U.S. close to maxing out its weekly vaccine supply, administering about 1.6 million doses a day on a supply of about 10 to 15 million doses a week. But that is also likely to change, and soon. Capacity is expected to nearly double in March and April and will rise to over 30 million weekly doses available in June. Now, according to an analysis by Bloomberg, that essentially assumes drug manufacturers now able able to hit their delivery targets, which, by the way, not a given here, but the current supply problem is increasingly likely to flip into a demand problem by late spring or early summer. I mean, again, Carlo, there are epidemiologists out there that say if we continue to hit these good targets that we're at and more people continue to get vaccinated, who knows, we might hit herd immunity even before the start of the summer at this point.
I think that that's probably unlikely, but I think that we're headed in the right direction. I keep saying it. I'm turning into sort of like the resident canary in the coal mine, or the COVID optimist here, which is weird for me because I'm almost always I'm a pessimist about pretty much everything, if you haven't noticed. But it's funny, right? Because we're doing a pretty good job in totality when you look at the vaccine administration numbers. But those numbers can be misleading, right? So the best states are actually Alaska, West Virginia, North Dakota, New Mexico, and Connecticut. I've heard anecdotally that Florida is doing a decent job, and the people in those first groups have now pretty much gotten their shots. Yep. But it varies down to county. I mean, in Westchester County here in New York, where my parents are, they got their vaccines. Easy peasy, done and dusted. It was fantastic. 10 miles away in the Bronx, our colleague Liam says that he can't get his elderly father an appointment for the life of him. So it's just amazing how it differs by county. But from what I can tell, this is a supply-based problem. The underlying infrastructure is getting better by the day. So when these reinforcements hit the supply chain, we're going to be in a very good place, I think. And by the way, just speaking of being in a good place, cases are down 75%
I know, that's the best part.
In the last 6 weeks. The national test positivity rate is below 5% now for 2 days straight. First time we've had that since October. This is happening way faster than anybody thought. Now, we thought that we would, in mid-late February, that we would be either going up or, the best case scenario, plateauing. But cases are in free fall. It's amazing. I think what's probably behind that, I think there's a lot more natural immunity out there in some populations that has been accounted for. But all of this is just to say this is fantastic news. I don't want to lose sight of it. Obviously, the variants, I still worry about those. That keeps me up at night, and they could complicate things. But let's not be overly glum. Okay, here's what I'm going to say. Right, I feel like the media is doing a bad job of not saying the good news when there is good news, because we need people to feel like the stuff that they're doing, wearing masks, socially distancing. Yes, exactly. Right. And it is working. What you're doing is working. So keep doing it. Don't listen to people who are like, well, COVID's going to be here forever and, life will never be the same again. Like, all that does is have the effect of people being like, OK, well, if that's the case, then screw it. I'm going to stop doing anything. Yeah. So I just want to, kudos to all of us for crushing this curve.
By the way, the other amazing nugget in all of this, poll after poll after poll, Carlo, continues to say that the amount of people that want to get the vaccine also on the rise as well. You might remember just a few months ago that we were hitting 65-70% of Americans that were saying that they plan to get the vaccine, which is horrible numbers, especially if you want to reach that herd immunity level. So the idea now that more and more people are starting to feel comfortable with the idea of getting this vaccine. So clearly the education front on all of this is working as well, which is huge news as well.
Yeah, this is what I've been saying. I think that people, once their neighbors and their family start getting it and they're okay and they're not getting sick and they're able to hold their grandkids and go to the store and not have to worry about getting sick, I think that that's really going to change the momentum of this thing.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about the big story that happened yesterday on Capitol Hill. Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev apologized during his congressional testimony for the decision to pause trading in stocks like GameStop, calling the extreme volatility in that stock a black swan event that was impossible to prepare for. Now, Keith Roaring Kitty Gill, that was one of the good ones from yesterday. He also testified, and he made a bullish case for why he and other Reddit traders rallied behind that GameStop stock. On the other side, the founder of the hedge fund that bet against GameStop defended his firm's bet. Carlo, I watched maybe 3.5 hours of the 4 hour plus of testimony yesterday, and I learned absolutely nothing throughout all of this. I think congressional members learned absolutely nothing during this as well. Yeah. If anything, you had sort of Democrats going after the hedge funds and you had Republicans essentially going after Robin Hood. And at the end of the day, it was Keith Gill who looked like the star out of all of this. And the funniest part for so many people who maybe weren't accustomed to this story and yesterday maybe saw a lot of the players for the first time, you saw Keith Gill and Vlad Tenev, people thinking, who was the difference between these two guys? They look exactly the same.
Alike, right? Yeah, Becky was saying the same thing when she was watching. I don't think we broke any new ground. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't watch much. I caught up on the coverage last night. I did watch the beginning where Maxine Waters kept interrupting Tenev in his opening statement. That's a big no-no. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to let them give their opening statement, but whatever. So yeah, Robin Hood basically saying this was not a liquidity crisis when they halted those trades. I think that that's not true. I don't really buy it, but this is, of course, one of, I think they're hoping for 2 or 3 more of these hearings in the coming weeks.
By the way, the thing that was the craziest out of all of this, and if anything, it made me more infuriated with the whole process, was I am not a fan of these Zoom congressional hearings because in the House, unlike in the Senate, Carlo, in the House, there were over 50 members on the House Financial Services Committee, and there was literally probably 10 of them who didn't mute their microphones during this Zoom conference yesterday. So you had random people talking in the background during the testimony. You had Maxine Waters pounding on things in the background. You had people opening and closing doors during Vlad Tenev's testimony. And you had congressmen multiple times have to tell everybody, hey, can you please mute? And so only if
now the mute thing out, right?
Yes, and it's like we've been doing this for a year plus. How do you still not know to this day how to mute your microphone? And so it was awful. The other thing I felt bad for, we had a delegate from Guam that was on the call yesterday. He waited for 4+ hours to finally get his question in. I don't know if you know the time difference between Washington and Guam, but essentially it was like 3 o'clock in the morning for this poor guy, having to ask his one question at the very end of the testimony, while the rest of the members of Congress were like, okay, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm getting out of here.
Hey, good for him for sticking with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, the other big news that was out of this world yesterday, Carlo, NASA's Perseverance, their rover successfully touched down on the surface of Mars yesterday, where it is now preparing to explore the site of an ancient lake. Now, over the coming days, the Perseverance is going to beam back photos of the red planet and will even launch a 4-pound helicopter to get some great aerial shots. It'll also give us the first ever sound records from what's happening on Mars. I don't know if you watched this live as this was happening. I mean, this was awesome to watch this yesterday, especially given the 7 minutes of terror that we've heard so frequently about. Essentially landing this with that 7 to 11 minute delay that you have between what's happening on Mars and what's happening here on planet Earth, to get this thing to land on the ground properly is so impressive that they were able to do this. Carlo, I can't wait for what these photos are going to come out looking like. Just even the stuff that we saw yesterday was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it was truly one of the great engineering accomplishments of our lives. It's just so cool to watch all these rocket scientists. By the way, I couldn't believe how many were women. I don't know if that makes me sound sort of like an ancient old fogey here, but
you're like accustomed to like Apollo 13, the movie, and it's like all white dudes.
It's like all the guys, and their ties and like short sleeves, like smoking cigarettes. Like, I mean, one of these women looked like she was like 25.
I know.
She's a jet propulsion scientist. It's like incredible. It's just, I mean, space stuff is just. It sounds so corny to say it, but it's like, it is such an amazing example of like smart people at the top of their game working together to do something incredible, and it just makes you so proud to like be an American, to be a human. It's just awesome.
Well, on top of all of that, Carlo, again, because we've gone a year plus with just horrible headline after terrible headline after just negative story. So watching this happen and then watching the jubilant reaction of everybody at the Space Command Center, high-fiving, bumping elbows, super excited. That was a good news story that I think we've all been waiting for. We haven't had something that was uplifting and made us feel good in so long. So I think that added to why so many people loved this story.
Yeah, no question about it.
Okay, so Carlo, I'm very excited because this is one of my first Love Hate 8s I've ever done with you guys.
Oh, yes.
And you know I love any excuse to make Jill Wagner seethingly jealous, so I'm very excited to play this game with you.
Okay, I'll start out. One thing we love this week, Jill, if you're listening, he doesn't mean that. I know you are listening. Okay, one thing we love this week. Okay, so I've been meaning to do this one for a while now. You know, those Progressive insurance commercials with Dr. Rick, the guy who teaches people how to avoid becoming their parents. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, oh yes, I love those ads.
I'm having a big lunch and then just a snack for dinner.
So we're using a speakerphone in this store. Is that a good idea?
So I don't watch a lot of television I don't watch a lot of live television with commercials, but whenever I do, these come on. They must be playing constantly.
All the time.
And I laugh every time.
Or your targeted ads keep sending you Progressive ads for some reason.
That's probably what it is.
Are you looking for insurance? Is that why?
No, the camera in the TV can probably see that I'm laughing, and they're like, "Oh, keep feeding this guy this. He loves it." I think they're so funny. With the one when the guy's dad is helping this other guy back out in the parking lot without being asked. Like, that is my mother.
Oh, I didn't see that one. I've seen
so funny.
I've seen a bunch of the other ones, and by the way, it's so true because it's like I think my husband's turning 40 in April. And I'm in my late 30s, and I think as you get to this stage of your life, you start to realize all the weird idiosyncrasies that your parents did that either drove you crazy growing up, that now you're bringing on in your own life, but you've kind of changed it just a little bit. And so that's why I think those Progressive commercials really hit home, because you're like, God, my dad would totally do something like this, and I'm such an asshole for doing this, and yelling at him when I was a kid.
I'm not even a dad yet, and when I see the teenagers in my neighborhood out, I'm like, what are these kids wearing?
Yes.
It's God. Okay, and one thing we hate on the same note, pretty much every other commercial these days is for like a drug to treat the side effects of some other drug you're taking. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. It's so depressing. I don't know if you remember, there was a commercial a couple of years ago that was literally for a pill to help you with the constipation that you were having from your opioids. And I was just like, God, when the aliens come and they try and figure out what went wrong with human civilization, I think that they're going to look at that commercial and it's going to be like a pivotal moment. It's just,
listen,
really
I am very much guilty of going down WebMD wormholes and figuring out what's wrong with me. I also feel like anytime I watch cable news, I'm getting mesothelioma because I see those ads every 5 minutes on cable news. So that is funny that we have to have a drug to treat a drug that we're helping for something else. Carlo, one thing we ate, and I know this is me personally because a lot of people know I am a crazy Diet Coke drinker, and I've been trying to drink less Diet Coke, which is a very trying thing for me. So I've moved on now to sparkling iced tea. Basically, any carbonated beverage is amazing. We have a bevy machine here at the Cheddar headquarters, and it is like my favorite thing ever.
I missed that thing, yeah.
But any good innovations in the iced tea game, really amazing, and it's also really helping me kick this Diet Coke habit, which literally is going to be the dying thing that's going to kill me. Which, by the way, in my obituary, if it says death by Diet Coke, I'm also fine with.
So wait, what is the sparkling iced tea brand that you're
There's this
into?
one, I don't know, there's this one at Whole Foods. I can't remember what it's called, but they have like a range of different iced tea, sparkling iced teas, and you can find them anywhere now. Like, this is like becoming this hot thing. Like, sparkling water really had its huge moment, and it still is, but now like you're seeing all these big companies like Nestle and others who own all these sparkling waters out there start to snatch up other sparkling beverages out there. I mean, they have sparkling kombucha out there now.
You know what brand is really good in the sparkling beverage game is, by the way, this is a good one for this week because Jill doesn't drink any like carbonated beverages.
I know. She's like Tom Brady. She's crazy.
It's weird. But what was I going to say? Oh, San Pellegrino. They have they have like 3 or 4 different kinds of sparkling drinks, like based on the time of the day. It's like a very Italian thing. There's the one for like with no calories, and then there's one for like the little afternoon when you need a little jolt that has sugar in it.
So you know what's so funny you say this? So my husband used to do marketing in the food and beverage industry, and San Pellegrino, which by the way owned by Nestle, they have a bunch of different carbonated brands. One of them also being Perrier. Perrier was marketed more towards millennials. It's supposed to be you're out having fun. San Pellegrino is marketed specifically for higher end fine dining experiences. So they always kind of say that San Pellegrino is always supposed to be eaten with a meal. You're not supposed to have San Pellegrino if you're like, oh, really? I'm just going to walk around and I'm going to have a San Pel around. You're supposed to have Perrier for that, not San Pel. So I just think it's so interesting the marketing that goes into how they're going to get you sparkling water and what different times of the day you're supposed to have that.
That's amazing. Fantastic. Okay, but one thing before we leave, I want to shout out Natalie. She sent us some love hate dates of her own, and I just liked her love, which was that wearing a mask hides her coffee breath, and she appreciates that.
True.
But what I said to her, what I replied to her is the corollary to that is that you just sort of get your breath right back.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
100%.
You're just if you have like sort of like bad breath or like you just ate something, you're just getting that right back at you.
Carlo, I have sneezed multiple times, and it's like while I've had a mask by accident, and it's like I'm ingesting the sneeze again. It's the worst.
It's like a diaper blowout basically on your face.
Yes.
Okay, we're going off the rails here. That's my cue to end this. Baker, thank you so much this week for filling in.
Buddy.
You're the man. We appreciate you. Jill will be back on Monday. And that is what you guys need to know for Friday, February 19th. Have a great weekend, everybody.